I'm hungry. Bring me some pills on which to dine. I'm thirsty. Bring me some whiskey, gin, some wine.
You're listening to the Hult Center podcast, and today I am thrilled to be chatting with Meow Meow, who will be here at the Hult Center Tuesday, March 5th. Hello.
I'm excited already.
We're excited to have you.
Well, I've just landed in Vancouver to perform with the symphony, and I'm thinking if I start walking straight after the symphony show, I should be with you on time.
Perfect.
It's just a lot of baggage to deal with. That's part of being the showgirl on the road. A lot of baggage.
Yeah. How many bags do you have?
Well, currently I've got 3 enormous suitcases because this little tour has got 3 different shows in it. So, the band members, they can basically bring, hand luggage, and I'm the one who brings. I do love a prop.
Sure.
And a feather and a sequin. And in fact, my dress set off security as I was leaving yesterday because it's got so much ancient vintage diamantes on it. I love it because it's sort of like a falling apart chandelier, and it sort of epitomizes the sort of I think the music that we're doing in this particular program. That's really, it's like the shards of memory in a way. So I really love this dress, but it's incredibly heavy, and it turns out looks like some kind of weapon.
Oh, in X-ray form.
Yes. So you can imagine.
Yep.
I was thinking it was going to be a humble drink bottle that I'd left in there, but no, it was the dress. And anyway, it's quite something.
That sounds good. They're like, ma'am,
luggage.
Please step out of line.
That's right. I know. I thought, oh no, what if it's done liquid foundation or something? Oh no, it's this huge. They said, are you carrying jewels? And I said, yes, but they're not real. I've got like a trumpet in there. I've got feathers. I have a plastic leg. There's a lot of stuff, you see.
Before we get into the performance of Sequins and Satire, Divas and Disruptors, the wild women of the Weimar Republic, can you tell me a little bit about you, your artistic journey from there to now this international cabaret star?
Thank you. That's a lovely way of putting it. Well, I usually say my origins are lost in the martini mists of time because it's true. It's all a bit foggy. But I've really had this I guess I've always sort of followed the music that interests me, which one of my very early fantastic agents kept saying, oh, you're off to do that plinky-plonk avant-garde music, aren't you? I said yes. But it's sort of taken me all around the world of sort of, I guess, I've found that as a singer, if I don't really love what I'm singing, I've got quite a tiny voice. And then if I really love it, then this huge thing opens up.
Absolutely.
And I guess, weirdly, someone like Nina Simone, well, no, there's no one like her. Nina Simone was a huge influence growing up because I think her voice isn't classically perfect, but the passion and the storytelling within that kind of broken, all-ranging sound that comes out of her was of sort of very early. I listened to lots of Piaf and lots of opera and Schubert and Schumann. I had really wonderful people around me, so I had a lot of music and jazz, early jazz. But something about Nina's voice really unlocked, I think, a sort of fearlessness to a degree about how I sounded and just really concentrating on the message of the songs. And that's kind of taken me all over the place, and particularly into this music of the Weimar period in the 20s and 30s. It's so fascinating, I think. But I've done all sorts of things. I've played Titania at Shakespeare's Globe in London, which was just wonderful. I played Miss Adelaide in Guys and Dolls at Royal Albert Hall, which is one of my favourite ever shows. So I do musicals and things like that, but I often in my own theatre work, I often seem to be kind of reworking old stories, whether they're fairy tales or myths. I'm a huge history buff, so I like to sort of bring a lot of old music into the present and mix it all up.
Yeah.
So it's a sort of interest. It's some of the I've had lots of sort of actual theatre pieces which are narrative, sort of dance music theatre pieces, I suppose, that I've done around the world. And then there's also this other life as a cabaret performer in smaller, more intimate venues, or indeed in stadiums. I think it's all about the song, and have been known to stage dive. So that, of course, means that really only the back of the theatre is the limit. Sometimes out the door to the bar. But it's very it's quite an eclectic career, I suppose, with those
Yeah.
West End shows, and then big concerts of my own stuff with the London Symphony. I'm about to do Vancouver Symphony. And that's a mixture of, Piazzolla tangos and Radiohead. And I work also quite a lot with Pink Martini, the beautiful band.
And they are favorites around here as well.
Oh,
So
they are just
yeah.
and that's been a very beautiful collaboration with Thomas Lauderdale, the band leader.
Hmm.
And we've worked together for a long time. We sort of fell in art love and started writing songs together, and I tour with them quite often, which is like a little holiday for me because I don't have to take 3 baggages full of full
Yeah,
of costumes. I just have a lovely time and everything's organized, and um, it's like being on stage with my best friends. It's very beautiful. So
that's pretty great.
yeah, and that's fun because I think, you'd have to be a very churlish person not to love that music. So it just
Absolutely, yeah.
feels always like a gift to be on stage with them and touring the world with them. So that's sort of you know, that's my fun bit where I get up to the Hollywood Bowl or big festivals
Hmm.
in France with 20,000 people and things like that. And it's just joyful. I love that
Yeah,
music. Yeah.
that's great. And so you balance, theater, comedy, politics, sex, and jazz. Kind of like it's like they belong together and always have
I think so.
belonged together. So, what was the catalyst for this meld of different things?
Well, I never, when I was growing up, I mean, I was really lucky in that I saw a lot of opera, um, operetta, classical music, and feminist, avant-garde theatre
Hmm.
and circus. But it was circus without animals. It was all sort of political circus. So I feel like from a very young age, I had this. There was no distinction between high art and low art. It was always we had Victor Borger on the and Bing Crosby and Françoise Hardy, the French '60s pop singer, mixed in with um, Mireille Mathieu and Jesse Norman. It was sort of a very eclectic listening experience, I think, as a child. And I, I would force everyone to watch me dancing agonized performances to Mahler, and at the same time realize that I could make people laugh. And um, so I've never, that's why I think a lot of the music from that 20s, 30s period is so interesting because it really is this collision mashup of, in a way, the end of Wagner and Mahler and uh, blending into popular music of music hall and vaudeville
Hmm.
and jazz. And by the time jazz gets from America to Europe, it's a totally different sort of, it's weird jazz.
Yeah.
And that's a whole fascinating history of how that infected, like the tango, when the tango hit Europe, it became its own machine of sort of European tango, and the same with jazz. It's not, it's sort of fascinating, the groups that made it over from America and toured Europe, and it all hit with the dance craze, of course, for Charleston and the shimmy and, you know, uh, the two step and the tango and the sort of exoticism of Orientalia. I think I love those mashups. I think I like the collisions of sound of art, and I think that period is particularly fruitful for really the devastation of World War One physically and psychically on people means that you've got both this sort of fractured landscape to make music out of, but also a sort of nihilism and hedonism. And then other people have a great optimism about reshaping a new world. So there's a dissonance in the sound that's coming between, just ridiculous comedy songs to make you forget, and other really sort of staunchly political songs to as calls to action. And I find that fascinating.
Yeah, so now we're getting into the details of Sequins and Satire here.
Yeah,
So for people that don't know, the Weimar Republic, it's 1919, post World War One.
yeah,
Women can vote for the first time,
yes,
and jazz arrives in what is now Germany. And like you said, it was all about dancing and movement.
yeah. Because there'd also been dancing had been outlawed, during it
Yes.
was sort of too, morally, um, it was an issue, not just the freedom, but the morality of it. And there'd been a lot of censorship prior to the Weimar Republic sort of opening up. So
Yeah.
the way through censorship, a lot of the public entertainment had to be more coded, and then in a way that sort of explodes. And um, I think that period of 1919 until the Nazis came to power in 1933 is really, you had the famous inflation in Germany of, the famous image of people carrying their money around in wheelbarrows.
Hmm.
A piece of bread in the morning cost a million times more by the afternoon, and that sort of thing. I mean, really, not only the moral shame of losing the war, but the reparation deal being so
Yeah.
difficult. And then there's a sort of period of stabilization. But then there's the Wall Street crash, of course, which, ricochets through the world again.
Sure.
Um, and there's, I mean, always in those big cities, you've got this sort of excitement. It's the same in America. I mean, the excitement of um, industrialization and modernity and speed, railways and trains and machinery being both exciting but also putting people out of the workforce.
Yeah.
So it's a time of conflicts, and I think, as well as kind of a loosening of morality, it's pretty interesting because, the famous kick lines like that came from Ziegfeld Follies and, much earlier in the States, but there's, now in Berlin, it sort of epitomizes machinery and uniformity, and it's a weird mix of sort of, you know, bodies on display. And when does that turn over into, going from naked culture and it's all very healthy? When does that turn into the complete decadence of, amorality? And when does that turn again into uh, naked culture and healthy bodies turning into healthy young Nazis? It's fascinating.
Yeah.
The same bodies are used to sort of advertise the Workers' Party and the Nazis, and machinery and the most fleshy, heightened sexuality that you can get, and yet denuded of sexuality. I'm fascinated by this.
I mean, yeah,
I hope
as am
this
I,
isn't
and
overwhelming. I hope this isn't
it's
overwhelming, this talk.
no, no.
Be kind, listeners. The show is funny, and it's got great music in there, but it is really a time of conflicts, and I think that's why I'm always drawn to it, because a lot of times you get these, bitter sort of texts, but really beguiling melodies, or the other way around. It's interesting.
and it's the history repeats itself. So
Well, this is
bringing
the
up
thing.
these topics again now is right on point.
It's on point, and it's verging on completely depressing, I have to say. Um,
No, that's yeah.
we are finishing the whole tour at Carnegie Hall, and which is absolutely, very exciting. And so, Hult, I will be very happy to get any notes that you have after the show. Don't scream them at me during the show, but after the show. Um, but their whole season is called Dancing on the Precipice, the fall of the Weimar Republic. And it really, I think they've programmed that entirety as, a reflection of the precariousness of democracy and what we are facing
Yeah.
very strongly now. When they programmed this, however, that was before Hamas and Israel and Gaza, and I mean, it's terrifying because I've been writing about it a lot, sort of trying to get my head around, the 20s. It's 100 years ago
Yeah.
that all this was building up again, and I think, of course, it's not the same. It's a different world, but the similarities of uh, rights being eroded, um, a sort of a new censorship, be that political correctness or prudishness, whatever it is,
Hmm.
on all sides. There's a fear of speech, and at the same time, obviously, we've got sort of the rise of dictators all over the world again, and it's
Yeah.
it's kind of it's so shocking. But I think, when people were writing these songs in the 20s, did they? I don't think anyone could have imagined the sort of industrialized murder that was going to happen in the 30s. I,
No.
I,
They didn't even believe it when it was happening.
well, this is the thing, and I think pogroms have happened throughout history. There've always been despots. There've always been attempts by various bodies to annihilate other bodies. Like, I don't think those things aren't new, but I think in the 20s, I don't know. We look back at those songs and think, well, they were so daring or they were so on the money. But I don't know if people really could have envisaged, um, whatever political leanings they have. I don't know if they could have envisaged the sort of the efficacy of mass destruction, both through the right wing and, Stalin's purges. I think they're sort of the human emotions of greed and control are the same, but
Yeah.
and I think that's the difference now. We do actually know that there is sort of, wide scale capacity for destruction, and so we do need to be careful. And I'm finding it terrifying at the minute, the lack of care in everybody's language, um, the inflammatory. I mean, you're impassioned, of course, it's inflamed, but inflaming right now, it just feels like we're all shutting down conversation yet again, and that's terrifying to me. So, every time I come to this material, I think, oh, it couldn't be more relevant. And then the next time I look at it, I think, oh, it's even more relevant. And here we are.
Yeah.
I'm
It-
actually pulling some of the things out because they feel almost too literal suddenly.
yeah.
And I like to do things that are multi layered so people can, read them in many ways. And if I'm simply singing the exact facts, it feels too, brutal in a way. I'd rather have the ambiguity for people to find their own way into it.
Hmm. Yeah. And it's, no matter how bad things get or have gotten, this stuff prevails and makes it through.
The music, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, that's the extraordinary thing. I think so much of it was lost, and why I've made this particularly about the women of Weimar. I mean, it's a broad enough topic to let me do songs about women by women. Um, it's interesting who did make it through just musically. So many of these composers, of course, were Jewish and or viewed as degenerate purely by their political, their left wing leanings.
Hmm.
And some became, stars of the Nazi regime. So it's a mixed time, and I guess there's that thing of what is our what is our responsibility as artists to to be involved, to comment. I don't know, is it enough just to, I mean, I do believe in music as a healing thing, as a thing that replicates the heartbeat and bypasses a lot of
Hmm.
brain, and that's why I do love to I think with comedy as well, as usual, it's much more effective than just yelling at people, particularly in German. But you know, you have a platform to say things, but at the same time, the speed with which people do, short sentence saying things that will fit in a byline is always terrifying to me. And so it's why I do like to have things be more ambiguous and be more allow for the various for the reality of things, which is always much more complicated.
Yeah.
But I'm there's a lot of the women and the composers who simply were just murdered, deemed as degenerate, banned, and even from 33 onwards not allowed to perform. I mean, MCs were banned a little bit later on because the MC was actually where a lot of political commentary would happen. And so I think the Nazi Party could really see that there was potency within the arts, but at the same time, I wish that the arts had that power right now.
Yeah.
Um, there's other people who've just disappeared, and their archives, of course, disappeared. Walter Benjamin, the philosopher, who massively has been sort of a huge philosophical influence, I think, on 20th century thinking.
Hmm.
It's only a lot of his. He ended up committing suicide in France, just on the border. He was not able to get out, and Hannah Arendt took his suitcase of manuscripts to America. I mean, there's unbelievable stories of
Jeez.
people saving, either trying to make archives, hiding records. Um, there must be a notion that these things are important, that people, of all the things they chose to take, didn't take furs, they took manuscripts, or they took a painting, or
Yeah.
so that actual physical journey of uh, how things reached us. I mean, Kurt Weill was lucky to get out earlier, and of course he had all these Broadway hits as well, and so his work. I mean, also I think he's just the most genius composer, and so his legacy has been. I mean, they still find new things now, but it's been absolutely continued because he stayed alive. Things might have been lost, but they still had. There's a fantastic foundation that is devoted to keeping his work alive, and then other people, it's sort of like scrambling to find little shards. And I guess I've tried to look at those people as well while making this program, because I think there's a way of trying to honor those people who just,
Sure.
and a lot of dancers too who didn't have songs. Their whole form was transitory,
Hmm.
so they're not, the only way we know about them is how they've been reviewed, maybe a little bit of film footage. And so I want to remember those people too who weren't written about in a million books and therefore weren't iconicized in the same way historically.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm very good when I'm jet lagged. There's so many big words. I don't know what I'm saying, listeners. But it's only
to
a short show,
to
so I can't do it.
to reassure listeners, the show is entertaining and
And
funny, and
we'll do the splits. You will love it. And we'll all come out, I hope, filled with more love in our hearts than rage, and a little bit of kindness through the beautiful music. But it's it's terrifying, I think.
yeah.
And yeah, just the songs of exile, even, which I'm not looking at as much because we're really looking at that period before,
Hmm.
just before everything. Well, the stirrings were there, but the lyrics of the Benares song, which is written before 1933, but by Kurt Weill and Bertolt Brecht, it's like, there is no whiskey in this land. There is no boy to shake with a hand. Where is the telephone? Is here no telephone? God help me, no. Where shall we go? It's all sort of this sort of thing of exile and immigration, and people being on the move. And that was written well before people were forced out of Germany, but it's a
Yeah.
theme that keeps being global of displaced people and feeling almost that you're on the moon with desolation. The only good thing that came out of that displacement was that, America gained a whole lot of extraordinary composers that completely shaped 20th century music, American music. I
Yeah.
think that's something that was, Broadway wouldn't be the same had we not had that exodus.
Hmm.
But too high a price to pay, I think.
Yeah. But when things are heavy, a little levity is what we all need.
We do, and that's, I think, no one wants to see things about more gloom. You need to see
Yeah.
things that are layered and let you dream a little bit and get a bit of solace and a bit of oral hugging,
Hmm.
which we will do.
Maybe you love me for an hour a day a week. I'm not sure when it all slipped away. But
What is
I'm
your favorite
still
song to perform?
Oh,
crying.
I think Zurabaya Johnny. Zurabaya Johnny by Brecht and Kurt Weill. I've sung it all my life. It changes every time. It changes the older I get. It never, ever fails to take me on a different, real journey. That and Ne me quitte pas, which I love by Jacques Brel. But in terms of something that takes me to a place,
Hmm.
um, I think that's the hallmark of a great song, that you can hear it done a million times by a million different singers and it keeps being something different.
Sure.
Yeah.
If you weren't a performer, what do you think you would do?
I'd love to be a photographer, actually.
Good choice.
I mean, another really highly paid, well appreciated art form.
Hmm. That's
I
right.
mean, no risks there, ladies and everyone. No, I think,
Yeah.
I do love the dance and I love the theatre, and I think um, that's part of my shows. They're very theatrical, and I often think,
Hmm.
yeah, I'd love to be a photographer. If I actually had any sense, I would go back and pay more attention to mathematics and, you know, I mean, I have various degrees that have nothing to do with show business, but, do you think I can go into the law? No.
Yeah.
It's
That's how it always works. I have a degree in literature and history, and
But this is why we can have such a lovely conversation.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
do think now I should go and work in a women's refuge. I've got some skills there, but at the same time, I think I'm probably more useful now doing what I'm doing and fundraising than, potentially stuffing up some very important. I don't know. Sometimes I feel there are more tangible ways that I could be useful. And then when you get your teeth into, I think, particularly during the pandemic, sort of having that taken away
Hmm.
and how essential that is to the soul. I don't think I could be without music. It really has saved me
Yeah.
all my life. But um, I think I love photography, and it's again, in it's just a moment in time. In a weird way, it fixes it, but it still
Hmm.
is symbolic of something that was a transient moment. That's why I like it.
Totally. All right. Favorite thing to eat or drink while on tour?
Oh, my band, they're not here at the minute. Oh, excuse me, the train is here. Um, Let me think. See, hilariously, I always have boiled eggs on my rider
I saw that.
because my discovery is that, if all else fails and you're doing the lights till the last minute, I shouldn't say that because I've got my beautiful production manager, Maddie Berman, on this tour with me. But, you know, if all else fails, a quick boiled egg gives you all the
Yep.
protein and energy to
That's
go
right.
on. So
That's right.
that's kind of my most useful practical thing,
Good.
because there's nothing worse than standing on stage and thinking, you idiot, you didn't eat dinner. Coffee, that's it. Coffee and
Yeah.
eggs.
There you go.
I'm
Coffee and
a
eggs.
simple girl with diamante tastes.
All right. What's your spice level from mild to 5 alarm?
Oh, probably 4.
Okay. All right.
Optimistic. I'm an optimist.
What was the last song that you listened to?
Oh, um, I'm going to discount the music in the elevator.
Okay. Unless it was really good
No,
elevator music.
it wasn't one that made me dance, because sometimes they do. I always like to have a bit of tall and tan and young and lovely. I like that
Yeah.
sort of
Girl from Ipanema. Yeah.
exactly. I'm thinking right now it's actually a fascinating song I might put in the show. Er oder Ich, it's called, and I found a recording of it. It's a German from the 20s, um, made by, it was a Langston Hughes poem that got translated into German in the 20s
Hmm.
and was sort of published in a book called Africa Sings. I mean, a fascinating period.
Yeah.
And and it's been put into this sort of super dramatic piano form, and I was listening to that and thinking, wow, because it's sort of everything about how the Germans kind of took on their notion of jazz, which is not jazz, but you know, it's from um, black writers who would then be, a few years later deemed degenerate.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
pretty interesting, and I thought that's kind of that's interesting. I
Yeah.
don't know. Do you think that's all right to do?
I think so.
I mean, I thought it was just sort of really interesting. I just thought the curiosity was great, and um, yeah, I was like, oh wow,
I think anything that's going to open a door for someone to learn something new
yeah,
that is beneficial is always a good way to go.
I think so too. And the discussion is what I want, not the shutdown.
Exactly. And then this is a really important one. Breakfast for dinner, yes or no?
Breakfast for dinner. Oh yes,
Okay.
we know how passionate I am about eggs and
Yeah.
bagels. Actually, my favorite treat is smoked salmon and cream cheese bagels.
Also really good.
Yeah, I should have put that on the rider.
Meow Meow will be here on Tuesday, March 5th at 7:30. Tickets are available at hultcenter.org. And thank you so much for talking to us, and we'll see you soon.
It's a great pleasure. I much prefer the sonic interview to the endless email questionnaire. I thank you very much.